pulled out a half-meter-long needle and jabbed it into the paralyzed woman's thigh. When she barely reacted, I pulled out a lighter. While everyone else looked completely baffled, I made my diagnosis the woman wasn't paralyzed at all. She was faking it.
Hey, I'm not faking.
The woman immediately protested, but I pretended not to hear her and even told my staff to get her out of the hospital right away.
I'm not faking!
But I didn't actually leave. Instead, I waited outside the room. It wasn't until my staff came to tell me the woman was having trouble breathing that I went back into the room and told her to relax, that I wouldn't burn her this time. But the next second,
Damn you!
My staff was at a loss for words over my bizarre behavior. Little did they know, I had already planned everything out. I moved closer to the woman and suddenly raised that needle. When I saw she showed no fear, I immediately looked at her neck, and sure enough, found her carotid artery was bulging. So without hesitation, I pushed the woman down onto the bed and stuck the needle into her chest. It wasn't until they saw the dark blood I drew out that my staff finally understood. I'd had the answer all along, I was just confirming it, and they had no idea that what I was about to do next would completely shock them. That morning, a man who'd been paralyzed for 8 years had driven his wheelchair into a pool to kill himself. Fortunately, he was rushed to the hospital in time and wasn't seriously hurt. But just as his wife was preparing to take him home, I found him and started spouting nonsense, saying he was a burden on his family and should just give up. His wife refused to abandon her husband, but I wasn't listening. I just stared at the man, watching for his reaction. When he didn't respond, I twisted the truth further, saying his wife didn't actually want to take care of a paralyzed husband, but still, the man showed no reaction. His wife didn't want to deal with my rambling anymore and walked over to her husband's bedside to take him home. She put his arm over her shoulder first, then started to lift him up. But right at that moment, I finally saw the man's mouth move slightly. I immediately rushed to the bedside, told the woman to put her husband down, and asked the man to repeat what he'd just said. As I spoke, I leaned close to his mouth and listened carefully. Though there was only the gurgling sound of his throat moving, this was exactly the answer I was looking for. I spent the entire night compiling every paralysis case in the hospital, having my staff study them one by one and compare them with the man's situation. My staff was extremely reluctant, all thinking this was a waste of time. Even the hospital administrator said I was torturing my staff. To their surprise, I told them this was just the beginning. My staff grumbled as they compiled the information. Based on the comparison, I suspected the man might have a cyst in his pancreas, so I ordered my staff to perform an upper respiratory endoscopy on him. My staff all thought I'd lost my mind. After all, the man had been paralyzed for 8 years, and his neck muscles had atrophied. Doing an endoscopy in this condition would cause his throat to collapse and could be life-threatening. But I'd made up my mind and didn't care about any of that. My staff had no choice but to comply. However, not only did the examination reveal no cyst in the man's pancreas, but when they withdrew the endoscope, it caused his throat to collapse. As they watched the man unable to breathe, they had no choice but to cut open his trachea. But even after screwing up this badly, I kept making excuses, saying the man's throat didn't collapse. Rather, his brain had malfunctioned and sent the wrong signals. I wanted to do a contrast scan of his brain. Hearing this, my staff couldn't take it anymore. Given the man's condition, doing the scan could cause a brain hemorrhage. They called me a devil who tortured patients just to satisfy my own curiosity. But clearly, they couldn't stop this stubborn demon. Yet after repeated scans, we found nothing abnormal in the man's skull. Instead, the noise caused fresh blood to seep from his ears. But even after being wrong